Alright, so now I've discovered Rush, and I'm just about into grade 11. But before I go on with from 82 to 88, I'd like to mention some very influential things that happened in the late 70s, but I didn't really realize until the 80s, when I really started collecting music seriously, when I had money and I was driving around a lot, so I wanted my music with me. But I remember, gee, it must have been 77. We were driving in the city with my parents, and we had the local FM station on, and this song came on, and it was just like buddy, you're a strong boy, blah 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 blah, you know, we will rock you. And then it of course segued into We Are the Champions, and it was so different from anything I had ever heard up until I was only 11 years old. But I really didn't know that it was Queen or who Freddie Mercury was or anything like that. But it stuck in my mind. And another very similar instance was listening to, when I was in grade 7, Pink Floyd's The Wall came out. And it was, I mean, what? You know, and of course we were little rebellious little jerks, and we walked up and down the hallways arm in arm singing, you know, we don't need no education. And, you know, just as a kind of bird to the principal, what could they do? We were singing, that's all. But, again, the whole concept of that album and all the other beautiful songs and the incredible musicianship and the lyrics and everything and the craziness of Roger Waters, and I never knew anything about that. And so this is why I'm telling this now, because in the 80s this is when I found out all about all this stuff. And there was another interesting phenomenon. We didn't get it much in Canada, but it was punk rock. And it only lasted a few years, really. It was mainly a UK phenomenon, just a bunch of actual punks who just thumb their noses at everything. And what we got over here was the kind of nice punk. But one of my favorite bands in the early 80s was a kind of a pretty talented punk band who had a couple of hits on the radio called The Monks. And they had an album, Bad Habits, where, I loved all the songs on it, except for maybe Skylab, whatever. Sounded like something Andy Kaufman would do. But, no, like Drugs in My Pocket and Love in Stereo and Johnny B. Rotten, you know, Spotty Face, on and on and on. That whole album is great, great album. And I still listen to it 30 years later. But anyway, in 1979 we went across Canada on a trip with our parents in the car, and my sister, who was, like I said, a couple years older, she still is, she met a couple of guys at a skateboarding park, which was the first time skateboarding came around. And they were actually professional skateboarders, like they did commercials and things like that, the Tony Hawk of their day. And one of them was a punk rocker. He had no hair and the mohawk and the whole bit. and he introduced her to a bunch of, the Dead Kennedys and a bunch of American and English punk rock bands. And she gave when we left Calgary, the last thing he did was gave her a mixtape of punk rock. And she really didn't get into it that much, but I got a hold of this thing and I was like, wow, this is pretty interesting, there's some good stuff in here. And the one band that, they weren't really punk, they were kind of right at the end of punk, and then they kind of started the American New Wave movement. So they took the UK New Wave and melded it with punk, and they came up with their own style, believe me, and that is Devo. And to this day, I love Devo. I have all their albums, and the greatest thing about Devo, not only is it their lyrics are hilarious, but they're actually very intelligent people, and there's two sets of brothers, the mothers Bob, Mark and Bob, and Jerry and Bob Casale, and then they had a guy named Alan Myers, I think, on the drums. The ironic thing was, the burgeoning electronic drums at the time, the guy played an acoustic set. Meanwhile, the four guys in front had every manner. They had, those guitar things, but they were actually keyboards. They had millions of keyboards, and I think they might have had an actual guitar. I'm not even sure. But I loved the permutations they put on the music. And it was kind of progressive new wave punk with nutty lyrics, which was everything I was into at the time, 82, 81, 82. And like I said, to this day, I really love Devo, and I'm sure that comes as a huge surprise to you. But like I said, I have a hugely diverse taste in music. A lot of people say, what kind of music do you like? Well, I like good music. I like music that I like. I don't have a genre. I don't like southern rock or classic rock or progressive rock or country. Hey, I'll listen to a good country song. I'll listen to Eminem rap. I'll listen to Jay-Z. I'll listen to, anything that's good in any genre, really. Classical. The Dixie Chicks. I like the Dixie Chicks. Hey, they're good. What can I say? And yet, nowadays, the music is just such crap. And the reason that it's crap is because there's no musicians anymore. It's all singing and dancing. And, it's not even singing, it's lip-syncing and dancing. And the spectacle has overtaken the musicianship and writing and songs. And, there are so many beautiful songs that were written in the 60s and 70s. And you hear that they were written by somebody, and they were given to a singer who could sing, but didn't know how to write songs, with a band who had a bunch of pedigree behind that singer, and then they made beautiful music. Now, everyone thinks they're an author and a musician and a writer, and you get crap. And so, there are a few bands who can do all that and do it well, and Rush is one of them, But it's pretty rare these days, and I don't know whether it's because people don't want to do it, or you can't make any money at it, or whatever. But it seems that everything's manufactured, and I don't know. I'm so fed up with today's music. Sure, there's some diamonds in the rough, and I'm all ears, but most of it's junk. So anyway, never mind that.